Just mute yourself. Hi guys,
Newton's
welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. Welcome to 2020. It's another installment of the Gin and Tonic Show. We had a bit of a hiatus or a break due to the fact that we could not stomach the reaction of a Muslim to a sentence in the Quran which allows men to rape females even if they are married to somebody else. And this Muslim said, no, this was perfectly acceptable. And this was something that really got to me. I mean, to me, it's unbelievable how a human being today can say something like that. And that is why I said, listen, guys, I can't do it like this. I need a break. And then Rob also said, no, this is sick. This is really sick. Are we really doing the right thing? Are we really capable of handling an ideology where the followers will go and condone the rape of women, even if they are married to other people, and then say, yes, this is acceptable, this is just? And Thunderous as well. He was, we were all shocked by this. So this was a bit crazy. So we said, okay, let's go back and rethink this. Let's go back and say, okay, are we still interested in doing this? Is there still a point in doing this? If these are the kind of people that we are talking to, what is the point of doing this? So we said, look, we can't leave it. We do have a platform here, and it's the only English speaking platform which is focused on Islam, where you can just call in and anybody can voice their opinion that I know of on the entire planet. And I think it would be a pity to let it go. So what we decided is we're going to change it a little bit. We're not going to spend so much time on the Quran because I think it was a bit boring for everybody. We're still going to have a block where we talk about the Quran. But the main change is that we're going to have a theme. So we're going to have an overarching topic for a particular month. And this can be like this month's misogyny, but this can be any idea from out of the entire ideology. And this is where I would welcome the participation of audience members to come and say, listen, I think that we should spend or pay more attention to X, where we said this can be slavery, this can be this the built-in supremacy, this can be addressing apologetics or anthropomorphism, anything, or this common trend, that this constant thing that we say people, yeah, you have to speak Arabic before you're allowed to speak or comment on the Quran. So it can be any one of these themes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have various discussion points where we're going to critique a video or what I welcome very much is the contribution by people on a specific topic. So we're going to look at quotes, issues, refutations, and so on. And then what we're going to do is, before we stop, like maybe half an hour before, whatever, we're going to go and look at the comments and see if anybody requires anything clarified or if there's any critique or if there's a correction or anything like that, so that we can then react to this and then maybe discuss with the chat or with the person or somebody comes in or whatever, and then maybe even have a hadith of the week at the end, as we used to have. So this is what we're doing. And as always, it's such a great pleasure to have people here who know what they're doing, who know what they're talking about, who are reasonable, where you can talk and you can rely on ethics and things like that. Welcome, Rob, and welcome, Thunderous.
Good evening, everybody. Great to hear from you again, Stops. And Thunderous, how are you, my good sir?
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back, and yeah, I'm fine. Great to hear from you, Stubbs, and great to hear from you, Robs. And I hope that all those viewers that used to listen to us in the past are here present, and hope you enjoy the new format. And we've missed you guys too.
Okay, what we're doing is we're transmitting live. So the live stream is going to YouTube and to Facebook. And anyone can comment on Facebook or on YouTube. We can see this all together here. So this should increase our range. I don't know if it does. We'll have to watch it. Maybe we'll go to a different one. I do not know. So there we go. So we are like a really good team, I think. And I think we agree on a lot of things. I mean, we're not all like non-believers, but we are definitely non-Muslims. Some of us, will be different people on the panel, ex-Muslims or not ex-Muslims. Rob and myself, we've never been Muslims as such. So we are just learners trying to understand what the ideology is, what it's all about, and trying to look at it from an outsider's point of view. In other words, not through glasses which are auto-correcting mistakes, not through glasses which automatically um, adjust whatever you are reading. So we are looking at it really as we would be reading a book, or we would be reading the instruction manual to a specific ideology. So there we go. It's the Gin and Tonic Show, which means that we're a live broadcast and we have a written chat interaction. Hello, chat. You are the people why we are doing this. Because we're not doing this for us. We are not important here. We are just the ones conveying the information. We are the ones doing the work behind the scenes. And then we are presenting this to you. So, and like I said, if one of you thinks there is a topic that they're good at and they feel like presenting it here, absolutely come here and just have your say. You can this can be 10 minutes, this can be half an hour, doesn't matter. Just as long as you can contribute something, this is great. So we're open to anything like that. So another thing, we are very much free expression people. In other words, if you don't come here and say, look, I want you to kill every Muslim or something, you're welcome to say whatever you want. So you can freely express yourself. There's no censorship here. There's no, I mean, I went on a chat today with Jordan M, and I just asked one single question. And immediately people were jumping on me saying, block this guy, chuck him out. And because they can't handle that. They cannot handle even the simplest question. I don't know why. So we don't do that. If you come here, you can have your say. I mean, I'm going to have an itchy finger. So if you start, screaming or whatever, okay, I'm going to mute you and you're out. That's cool. But if you just voice your opinion, that's cool. You can say whatever you want. And this is the funny thing that Muslims, for example, cannot understand. They said, are you going to allow us to come on your channel and tell people about Islam? And I said, yes. Rob said, yes, absolutely. And they were like, no, you're not. Well, we said, yeah, try us. You can come here, no problem whatsoever. Okay, there's Ultra. Just give me 2 seconds. I just want to do the intro here. So what we do is we address Islam, all right? We don't critique, we don't attack, and we don't say that if the Bible says something, then Islam makes it worse or better or whatever. All right? So we focus on Islam, and we use facts, reality, and reasoning. So we try not to, get emotional, even though sometimes I do, but with the arguments. And we categorically condemn any abuse, oppression, slavery, violence, anything that you will find, just right off the bat. So a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about, we condemn today in the 21st century. I think we can. And then I think we're just simply decent human beings. Okay, we're not in any way saying you must believe this, you have to believe. I don't care. If somebody wants to believe there's a God, if somebody wants to believe there's a flying donkey and talking ants, go ahead. Why should I care? So you can believe whatever you want. It's just that if you expect me to believe it, then you need to try a little bit harder. And if you want me to act according to what it says, well, China, then you really need to come out and really come up with something convincing. So what we do is we let the Quran speak, not thousands of people or scholars or whatever. We try and listen to the Quran. Yes, we will use hadith, the secondary text from time to time, but usually we go to the primary source. And that's what we try and do. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. We don't want your money. And with that, I welcome Ultra to the show.
Good evening.
Ultra.
Good evening. Yeah.
Hey, Ultra.
Right. Hey. Right. First of all, I have to introduce myself. My name is Ultra Funky. I am 1/3 of G Block's unholy trinity. Hello. Stop spamming.
Hello.
Atheist Rob, as you're referred to online. I'm not sure who the other guy is, but I can see a V, which looks like it's the symbol from the movie V for Vendetta, which is coincidentally one of my favorite movies. I said all of that in one breath. Oh, oh,
It's
oh.
V from Victory, the AC Crispin drama of the early 80s.
I won't lie to you, in the early 80s, I was like 2. So, yeah.
I wish I
You're the young one
Yeah.
on the panel. You're definitely the young one here. The rest of us, it's a competition for who's the oldest here. I'm actually probably the youngest out of the other three. So that tells you that you have some
Bloody hell.
maturity on the panel here.
Well, that's what we need, a bit of maturity, because obviously I'm quite immature for my age, to be honest. I'm a big kid. But let me just put this out there, just quickly. I think the most religion is superstitious nonsense. I believe personally, as a species, we can come up with a much better code of conduct which doesn't appeal to the supernatural, and atheists are awesome. Yeah.
Just so you know, Ultra, just so you know, Thunderous is a Christian, and we only focus
Oh.
on critiquing Islam here. So we,
Oh.
while we don't believe in other religions, the
Yeah.
critique is specifically against Islam here. Obviously, on G Block, where you and I are, we can talk about all the other topics. But just so you know, we're going to focus on that. I know that
all
may
right.
take a bit of the wind out of yourselves, but there's plenty to critique in
Wait,
Islam. So
hold on.
I think
No, wait.
it's
Hold
all
on.
good.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Let's go back to my original point about us being, as a species, being able to come out with a better code of conduct for life, better than any of these religions who claim to be the best for mankind for all times. That would include Islam. Now, one of the things that really grinds my gears about Islam is stoning to death. Now, I won't lie to you. That puts a real bee in my bonnet. It really, really, really does.
I think you're
And
not
then-
alone.
Yeah. Now, like, I can't get past it. Like, and the reason why I can't get past it is because somebody sent me a video on WhatsApp a little while ago of somebody being stoned to death. And, like, it was barbarism. It was barbarism, and no. And anyone or anything advocating for this type of thing, I can't be your friend. Yeah, no. Also, as well, just like I don't know. Islam for me is it's all madness, really. It's all madness. It's all just madness.
But I think, Ultra, what you'll get here, though, is, James having been an ex-Muslim and Stops having, looked into this for many, many more years. Some people say, oh, Rob, you know a few things. Well, I do, but both of the co-hosts here are more knowledgeable than me, so you'll get a lot more of the nuance that you wouldn't get anywhere else. And because this month is about misogyny, the stoning might actually carry into that as well, because oftentimes it is against women. So the theme for the month is misogyny, and that obviously ties in a little bit to that, what you just mentioned.
Now, listen, Rob, I'm not going to lie to you, yeah? Look, my wife, Mrs. Ultra, is a Tanzanian princess. I mean, she's Tanzanian, but she's not really a princess, but from her behavior, you would swear she's royalty, right? If I went home today and told my wife, who is pregnant, that, oh, by the way, your word is worth half mine, I would be physically abused. Physically. She would hurt me if I told her that. And, like, I'm positive that somewhere in the Islamic doctrine it says a woman's word is worth half of a man's. And I'm kind of like, yeah, you can't really tell that to a black woman. You really can't, because
we shouldn't really tell it to any woman, right? But
no. I'm saying no. I'm saying you shouldn't really say it to any woman, but I have to relate it to myself specifically, right? Rob, if I went home and told Mrs. Ultra, oh, by the way, babe, I've got this new religion. It's great, right? It's amazing and health benefits. and we don't have to pay interest on mortgages and all the rest of it. Oh, but by the way, shut your mouth. Rob, it won't go down well. It really, really won't. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, hang on a second. Wait a second. Are you telling me that a God, omnipresent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, all of the omnis that you can imagine, right, would create everything and it's all great, but women are fucked up? And not only are women stupid and deficient, but they have to cover up just in case men rape them. I'm like, well, listen. And then, come on. Really? In 2020? Really? Like, just really? Because I'm sorry, I don't even feel this needs to be broken down on an academic level. Just ask yourself, really? Exclamation mark, question mark, really?
Well, you'll actually get the
it's-
verses. Go for it.
It actually gets a lot worse.
The thing is that
Women are commanded to be obedient. Literally.
I'm not going to lie to you. I won't lie to you. Sometimes Mrs. Ultra is really trying. Really trying. And, sometimes I think, woman, shut your mouth. That's what I think. Inside, right? But because I enjoy a happy life, I explain to her like an adult, babe, listen, yeah, I'm not really feeling that. And here's why. And normally she's rational and she'll be like, oh, all right, don't worry about it, blah, 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 blah. That's how adults who are equals communicate and resolve conflict. I don't see the point in marrying someone who's supposed to be your equal, who's going to bear you children, if she just has to shut the fuck up whenever you tell her to. What is this? Come on. And again, Rob, stop spamming. Really? Explanation mark, question mark. Really? Really?
I think there's one thing you've said in all of that I want the panel to hear, and the audience as well. So there's a tendency of human beings to say something like, well, even in the 20th century, I mean in the 21st century or the 22nd century, as though to imply that it's bad for people to behave in a certain way now, but somehow the further back in time you go, the more tolerant or acceptable it was then. In my opinion, as somebody who accepts intelligent design as truth, I don't think there was ever a period in time where the way you treat a woman is somehow better in the past or worse in the past. You just don't treat women that way anyway. So rather than using sound bites like what even today in the 22nd century, we shouldn't be saying that. We should be saying women should never have been treated like that at all at any point in human history. The implication is when we say even in the 20th century or the 22nd century, we're kind of implying it's wrong now to do it, but it was okay in the 17th, 16th, 15th or the 10th century. So there needs to be a consistent pattern. You either treat women that way or you don't. And certainly everybody in this panel will agree there's never been a point in human history where you treat women in a disrespectful way, unless you're belonging.
Okay, but guys, we are now in the discussion, which is supposed to be right at the end after we get the facts. So we were still running through the program, and then what I was going to do, like a good boy that I am, I was going to place first in front the definitions of what misogyny actually is, because a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people have very, very wrong ideas what misogyny is and what is negative about the contents of the Quran. So I wanted to do this in a structured way so that we first get the facts, then we get the ideas, the opinions, and then we go into the discussion. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I think that's good if you can get a baseline. Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize for interfering. It's just that there was something said that I felt I wanted to say before I forget.
It's not, no, nobody did anything wrong. I love Ultra. I love his stance, his energy. I love his passion. Really,
I am
really
a wild
great.
card. Sorry, stop spamming. I'm new to the show, so I'm new to the
No,
format, and
no,
I'm a wild card. I'm a wild
brilliant.
card. Wild.
And
Ah!
I love people like you here. This is great. It's just we do like to, because people critique us a lot, and we need to be a little bit careful that we deliver first the definitions, and then we look at the sentences in the Quran, and we find something that we can substantiate. Even if, I mean, I'm less and less inclined to provide the sentences from the Quran. I mean, because I think Muslims are the ones who should know the Quran. So if I say beat your wife, everybody who is a Muslim should know what the hell I'm talking about. And so I don't need to provide this all the time. But if we are questioned, we do need to be able to substantiate what we're saying. This is why I'm trying to be in a, bring this in a structured way so that it makes it more easy to defend our position. Okay, that's the only point. So I'm not accusing anybody, and I'm not telling anybody, chastising anybody. Definitely not.
And also, Stops, I've just posted into the chat there the link for the stream as well. So if you're a Muslim and want to join, I guess, as you say, we just get through a little bit of the content so people can hear it, and then that discussion can come in. And especially if we have Muslims, I've been on a few Muslim channels, over the last few weeks, and invited them here, and they don't often want to come. So I go to, it's kind of like the lion going to the sheep's den, but the sheep are welcome to come to the lion's den if they wish. So we'd welcome them, and I've said to them that we will treat them with respect to the best of our ability.
Okay,
but that doesn't mean using kid gloves.
Okay, yeah. Rob, do you have anything newsworthy?
I was just looking at the one thing here. I'm on my phone, so I apologize that I can't share the screen. But, because it's kind of around, women and that sort of thing, it's more sort of modern things. So I don't know if anybody's heard of a woman called Linda Sarsour. You probably know her, Stops, and I'm sure
I have.
James, you've heard about her as well.
Insane. She's
Linda
insane.
Sour.
Yes, that's the one. So she's kind of a Muslim advocate, activist, whatever you want to call it, over in the US. She was a nobody, and then sort of jumped on the bandwagon of saying, religion is Islam is a religion of peace, and the hijab is a form of freedom and that sort of thing, much to the chagrin of her fellow Muslim ladies around the world that are forced to wear it, of course. But the interesting thing that I had here is that there was a women's march that was going to happen I'm just looking for the date here, somewhere in the US quite soon. And in fact, this women's march stopped basically because they ditched this lady Linda Sarsour and another one, right? So they were part of this because over in the US a lot of the far left sort of feminists are all up in arms and they go together. So I think just the one thing that I was scrolling through the news articles that hit me because of this whole thing, and she's the sort of person who says that Islam, and I think she's actually kind of said this, that Islam is probably the religion that gives the women the most freedom in history, which is just quite unbelievable. You do wonder if she has actually read the Quran, or in fact whether she has read it, and it's just like whatever it says, I'll say the opposite in the hope that people have never read it. It is
crazy.
Fascinating.
It's crazy.
But she's also smart enough to recognize that in the Western world, she's going to get two audiences that are going to pay her attention. Because in my opinion, Linda Sour has like an attention deficit disorder. That is to say, she starts behaving disorderly if there's a deficit in the amount of attention that she gets. So she has a two-tone audience in Europe and America. One is the Muslim audience that are certainly going to back her because she's speaking favorable about Islam and bringing Islam into the highlight of the media and the news. The second side will be all the leftists and such that'll be backing her anyway because she's saying what they want to hear too. So she has a twofold attack as far as I think she's using Islam to further or furnish her own agenda and, if you like, what's the word I'm looking for? Selfish desire for prominence. It's a great way of gaining attention if you're a narcissist.
Yeah, and the other quick thing, again, because we're just talking about women in general, the other thing that happens a lot, and Stops, the one thing, maybe not for this show, but maybe for a future show, is that video I sent you from Speaker's Corner, the recent one where the lady was defending Islam and women and so on. Do you remember the one that I sent you?
Yeah, but Rob, people are going to tell us, they're going to accuse us that we are shaming people, that we are shaming Muslims, that we are picking low-hanging fruit, that we are trying to make people look bad. Because, I mean, this woman is totally like cuckoo.
Yeah, but I think the view that she holds, whether it's her or somebody else,
Yes,
is quite a
it's
widely
a
held view,
common
at
one.
least anecdotally.
Yes, it's a very common view. A lot of Muslims have this. It's just I'm afraid that people will say, well, you're just trying to make people look bad by taking this one example, which is is a good example from our point of view because this is a common view. And it demonstrates how little people actually know about Islam, how little people know about Quran and the texts themselves. It is, but okay, we can try it and see the reaction.
But again, if you're a Muslim and you're listening to the channel, then feel free. We can give you the link, and you can come on and if you've got a different view, then we're interested to hear that. Because I heard again Jordan M today speaking. He's a recent when I say recent, the last year or two, and he had a couple of his friends on, and they were talking. And I sent you the link at that moment of time. I happened to be hearing it in the background, and they were saying exactly the opposite. Right? They were giving their justifications for why women don't have equal inheritance and all the rest of it. But I think, Stops, if you go through the definitions and the rest of it first, so we get through that, so everybody's on the same page, and then we can sort of open it up a bit.
Yeah. Well, let's do the Quran block quickly before we then go into the heart of the matter, because these are supposed to be intros. These are supposed to be the starters where we just go, take one or two news items, take one, two sentences from the Quran, and then we go into the theme of the month, and then we just, do the discussions and do the critiques and do things like this is the idea behind it. So I don't know if this is going to work, but this is what I'm trying to do. Okay, so the way that it works is, let me see if I can do this, then I do this. Yeah, that should work.
Yep, that works.
So if I start here and I say, okay, what is misogyny? Now it starts off very straightforward, which is the dislike of, or the contempt for, or the ingrained prejudice against women. Okay, so
It
the
doesn't say
origin,
anything about the mistreatment.
no, it doesn't. And this is very important. The misogyny is just the stance towards. Okay, so it's the dislike, contempt, or prejudice against women. That is what misogyny is. It does not require any kind of physical mistreatment. It does not require a man to do anything. There is no act here. It is the stance towards a woman and towards women in general. And that is what misogyny is, okay? And here in dictionary.com, it's the hatred, they go a bit stronger, dislike or mistrust of women or prejudice against women. So there are some common things here, but there are also some differences. Like here, suddenly we get hatred and the mistrust. Then if we go to another definition, you see that I need to switch off my jing, 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 jing. How do I switch that off? And quickly to brand show display names. There you go. So here in the Cambridge Dictionary says that misogyny is feelings, in other words, the attitude, the feelings towards, and the hating of women, or the belief that men are much better than women. So here it's not so much the attitude or stance, but actually the consequence already, that men are better than women. Then if we go to the next one, and now it gets more explicit because now we get the definition of the hatred of women. And now something interesting happens because here, from an etymological point of view, they are going from the sexism, and this is which is incredibly important because a lot of people equate misogyny with sexism, and it is not. Because, and this is exactly Ultra, and I'm very grateful for that you pointed that out. Sexism is exactly that. It is the discrimination based on sex or gender or whatever, and this also contains actions, whereas the misogyny does not. And this is exactly the difference. It's the behavior, it's the conditions or attitudes. And then misogyny refers specifically to the hatred of women. The word is formed from the Greek root misein and gyne, the woman. Each of these roots can be found in other English words, both common and obscure, like gyne helped with gynecologist and androgynous, and misein can be found as words, and so on and so forth. So this is quite interesting to see where these words actually come from and how they are being used today. And then finally, I took this from Wikipedia, because I found it interesting that they say also it is the hatred, contempt, prejudice against women or girls, and misogyny manifests in numerous ways, including social exclusion. Typical example, Islam. Sex discrimination. Typical example, Islam. Hostility. Typical example, Islam. Androcentrism. Typical example, Islam. Patriarchy. Typical example, Islam. Male privilege. The belittling of women. Disenfranchisement of women. Violence against women. Sexual objectification. And then it can be found within sacred texts, religion, and Western philosophy. So, misogyny is not only, okay, this is also important, is not only a phenomenon that can be found within Islam, but it is well, available, or is there in different kinds of ideologies and in different philosophies. So this is the important part, I think, to show that the definition has some commonalities, but also has some differences. And this is why I think it's very important that we understand that if we are talking about misogyny, we are talking about the stance, the feeling of hating women, or the belief that men are much better. And this is what we're looking at when we are looking at Islam. So very clear, very, very unambiguous way of looking at it, I think, in my view at least. Any questions, any comments, anything like that?
No, I think that's pretty clear. I think prejudice, again, and there's other words. So prejudice like an overriding word, and all the other words sort of flow from that as well.
Exactly. This is the thing. But we can't discredit, we can't like ignore the word hatred. Because I find that according to some hadiths, Muhammad was really shit scared of women. And he said, this is the master temptress, the master this, the this and this and this and this. So there's a lot of things that show that he was actually very scared of them. This is why he hated women, because he said they are the temptresses. They are the ones that can drive a man to do things that other things can't do. So being a temptress shows this hatred and this mistrust of women, and this prejudice, of course. Yeah. All right. So there we go. This is the definition. And now what we can do is we can find different examples. Oh, we forgot the Quran block. Oh, shit. Okay, I think we'll leave the Quran out for today then. Rob, what do you think?
That's fine. I mean, there's plenty of surahs anyway that we can bring up about this. And I think next week then we can do a block that we read a number, not one verse at a time, but we read a set of verses that we can discuss.
Okay.
Because I think it is still useful to get through the entire Quran, but we'll do it quicker, that as we discussed before, rather than sentence at a time and analyze every sentence. We'll analyze maybe between 5 and 10 surahs in a go, and that will be a way to move the discussion forward so it doesn't repeat itself in every single surah or multiple surahs in a short space of time.
Oh, sorry, guys. You've got a Muslim in the back chat. Bernie is an American Moorish Muslim, and he would like to come on.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to add him, Stops. I hope he's not the same Moor that was on Valley's channel earlier today.
No, it's a different guy. It's a different guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I just as a side note, I had a Muslim come on. I was on Veli's channel, but big up to Veli's channel because I did advertise our channel and his. So it's only fair that we advertise his channel here.
Come on.
So
yes,
Veli G Block is a live stream that runs like 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So if you type in Veli, VELLE, you will find the Veli G Block live stream. I think Stops has been on as a guest, so do look them up. They're on almost every day of the week. But I had just
decided. It's a safe space for atheists and agnostics alike. Come on in.
But the other thing that I had a Muslim come on. It's just interesting, right? I had a guy that claimed to be Muslim come on, and I asked him, what does God mean to you? And he said to me that God was that animates humans, and some other wishy-washy thing about being like energy in the universe. And I said to him, hang on a moment, why not just? He said this was the other thing. He said he was a naturalistic theist. I said, hang on, that sounds contradictory in my view. Unless you're going to redefine these words to mean whatever you want, and it turns out that he had to redefine these words.
Exactly.
Because Thunderous is a theist, right? But Thunderous wouldn't call himself a naturalist, because a naturalist denies that there's a theistic God by the typical understanding of a God, right? A God being a supernatural entity that exists outside, i.e. is supernatural. If you believe in the supernatural, then you can't be a naturalist. If you don't believe in the supernatural, then you can. But to try and have both of them, and I suggested that he speak to somebody else, because eventually he just was rambling. So it's just fascinating how people will claim the Muslim label but virtually be atheists, as far as I can tell.
Well, it's nothing new for a Muslim to reinvent words, and pretty much reinvented every word in the theistic discussion in the first place. And now we're using rhetorical devices and reinventing Arabic words from Muhammad's day. Nothing new here, then.
Yeah, and you need to be very careful, because I heard somebody on was it Safaz, when he just came and said, well, in the Quran it says so and so. Now, I wasn't 100% sure, but I thought this sentence does not exist in the Quran, and I checked it later and it didn't. So it's very easy to catch somebody out, but they will come and they will redefine words, they will make claims. This is from the Quran, when it is not. It's so dishonest. It's absolutely amazing. Okay. Simon James, because the question is that Arabs used to bury their baby girls. Yes and no. There are some indications that some tribes did this, and there are some who are saying no, nonsense. There were some Indian areas where this was practiced, but not generally. So there's conflicting material, conflicting information on this. I
Yeah,
have not been able to ascertain either.
Just on that subject, during my
No, I
own
don't want to
research
make
over
this a
the
big
years, I've
subject.
always,
This was just a sidebar.
okay,
Because
okay.
I know you mean well, and I know that you will have information on that, but then it gets into discussion, and I just wanted to say, look, there's nothing conclusive. Unless you can contradict me and say, no, it is conclusive because of this or this, then we just leave it. Is that okay?
Is that Muslim still in the back chat? Stops, you the host. You can see, I can't see.
I can't see, no.
Are you on a computer?
You put the link out there, so anybody should be able to
No,
join.
but you're the host. So what they'll do is they'll come in the back chat. They'll come along the bottom, so you'll see the four of us, but you'll see along the bottom, they'll be grayed out, and it says only the host can
Yes,
see.
I know,
Okay.
but there's nobody there.
Oh, maybe he jumped out then.
That's why I said
Okay,
you have
cool.
the link. You first need to click on the link, then I will see him in the back chat as a grayed out person, and then I can activate them. But there's nobody there.
Yeah, there was
Okay.
a guy called Brother Bay, BR-Bray, in the private chat. The only way you can access the private chat is if you are in the back chat. So maybe he dropped out. So I guess that BR is short for Brother Bay, or just if we can call you Bay, if you want to rejoin again in the back chat, and then just Stops will either see you or just pop a message in the private chat, and one of us will be able to see the private chat and notify Stops. I can't do it. Only Stops can.
Okay, so if we
Can we
look
continue?
at Islam,
Thanks for having me. I'm going to shoot off. Merry Christmas.
Cheers, matey.
and just when we were going to go into the discussion, I was looking forward to that. But thanks for being here, and please do come again. Okay, Islam has different areas, different eras, different, it's very difficult because you need to go and look at the different regions, you need to go and look at the different time spans. So if I go back like 1,000 years or something, and I'm looking at the Arabian Peninsula, then we had different areas like in Yemen and in the south of Oman, which had matriarchies. In other words, the women were in charge. This is something that scared the living Jesus out of some people. they were scared of this. Then they said, no, we need to change that. And this is why, apparently, allegedly, these things came out which regulated the whole scenery. I mean, I remember in the Bible you also have this. Okay, women are supposed to be quiet, and they're not supposed to teach and do things like that. So the Quran just copies this. Now, if I look at Islam, is there something like misogynistic thinking ideas? Do they exist in Islam? Do they exist anywhere? And this is why if you look at the way that the people live today, the answer must be yes, because it's only in Islam, as far as I know anyway, that women are that people are chucking acid into a woman's face. I don't know any other ideology that does that sort of thing. I don't know any other ideology that buries women up to their hips in the ground and then stones them. I don't know any other ideology that does that today on this planet. And now if we go back in time, we have sentences in the Quran that says, listen, you need to provide a woman with like 100 lashes, and you are not allowed to show any pity. And it says this in the book. And this is crazy. This is why I'm saying, how can anybody say there is no misogyny in Islam? If I look at the way that women are living today, I mean, I can have, any woman like go to space, and a Muslim woman is not even allowed to ride a bicycle. I don't care if the captain who's flying me from Doha to Dubai or something is a man or a woman. They should be, at the same level of competence. They should have the same training, and they should get the same salary. Why should there be a difference? Why should it be? I don't understand these things. So if I look at the reality today, I see that there is a lot of prejudice against women in the culture, in the society, in the rules, in Islam. Any other examples? Any other ideas on this before we go into the text themselves?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different examples, and I think as you go into the text, it will start to highlight some of the examples of this. And the other question to ask, of course, is why is it not the other way around? Or why is it that it only works one way, right? And women seem to be on the receiving end in a not positive way necessarily. Why is that? And I think that's
Okay, this is
something
why
that
I
we
wanted
can
to go back into the past. And in the past, we see that women were a cost factor because the men were, they were the workers. They could work in the field. Women were not so strong, so they couldn't work so much in the field. So they had to be fed the same way as the men, but they couldn't produce the same level of work. So women were seamstresses and cooks and things like that. And then this thing came in that you had to give money for the woman to compensate the man who had fed her all her life, so that she grew up to be this age, and this was where the dowry comes from. This is the idea that I heard from 14 or whatever 2,000 years ago. Any other ideas? No?
No, I think let's go into the text now.
Okay. Now, there's different ways. If I look at what Muhammad said about women, that I was shown the hellfire and that the majority of its dwellers were women. I see that the majority of the dwellers of hellfire were you, women. Women will increase in number and men will decrease in number. I've not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you. Is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man? Prayer is annulled by a dog, a donkey, and a woman. Never will succeed such a nation as makes a woman their ruler. And the Prophet said, a man will not be asked as to why he beat his wife.
Sorry, what was the reference for that, Stops?
Hadith from Bukhari.
Oh, from Bukhari. That's again assuming that Muslims that are listening or indeed accept the hadith, right? So I guess that's
Yes.
always a question to ask because
it's Muhammad, all right? You can't have
Well, a
Islam
Muslim
without
has no
Muhammad.
choice but.
Sorry,
So
say
yeah,
again?
you can't. Yeah, just a substance. You can't have Islam without the Hadith. The Quran makes it quite clear in about 7 or 8 points, 7 or 8 ayahs, that Muhammad is the example, or you have to listen to him. You cannot listen to Muhammad unless you go to the Hadith. To deny the Hadith or to not accept the Hadith is Allah Himself, when Allah Himself has prescribed that Muhammad is your model. The model of Muhammad is in the Hadith, it's not in the Quran. You cannot have the Quran without the Hadith. Islam stands on 2 legs. Equal
No,
is
no,
the
no.
Quran, and the other leg is the
Thunderous.
Hadith.
Okay, but you need to differentiate a little bit. You cannot have Islam and the Quran without Muhammad, but you can have it without the Hadith, because the Hadith are just the sayings and the I don't know what you want to call them of Muhammad. These are the ramblings, the musings, the opinions, the ideas, the whatever, the interpretations that were attributed to the person of Muhammad. So you can say, look, I can take Muhammad as a messenger, as somebody who took the guidance from the Quran and became the perfect person. But then what was said does not necessarily have to be the contents of the hadith, the way that we know them today. So there are a lot of people who are rejecting this and saying, no, we're taking Muhammad as a messenger, yes, but not the way that it is written in the hadith. So this is not automatically the case.
Okay,
Yeah, I
just
guess
just
the
to
question
respond to
is to
that.
ask a Muslim. But I agree with Thunderous, though. Most Muslims do accept at least the Sunni hadith, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, come on,
Well,
90%
can
of the
I just
people.
make my points and then then I'll end from this subject in itself. First of all, there are about 2 or 3 ayah in the Quran that says, when Allah and His Messenger have decided upon a matter, it behoves anyone to challenge Muhammad. Well, the word, then whatever decision Muhammad has made is what's found in the Hadith. So you have to go to the Hadith to find what the words of Muhammad are, or what the criteria or the commands of Muhammad are. That's where it is. So you can't have, in my opinion, when the Quran makes it quite clear what Muhammad has said, you can't have one without the other. If Muhammad is a role model, the role model of Muhammad is in the Hadith. Otherwise, what we're basically saying is that the Quran is Muhammad then. And that would mean that that has been created in heaven since before time began.
Okay, but then you also need to
That doesn't
add
make sense.
that the Quran is one side of the coin, which gives you the generalities, and then the specifics are being handled in the hadith.
I guess that the bottom line is that we'd have to ask somebody, but I think what Thadris is saying is that the majority of Muslims do accept the hadith, but it's always worth checking, right? So if you ask a Muslim, hey, do you accept Sahih hadith? And they say yes, okay, then they're off and running. If they don't, and I know Shia Isa, so he basically hates the Sunnis. He's more of an atheist against the Sunnis than we are. I mean, the way he goes into them, it's incredible. I mean, he calls them savage beasts or whatever the case is. He obviously rejects all of the Sunni hadith, right? So he's a Shia, so he'll take some of the Shia hadith, which may or may not be the same. I haven't actually looked at the Shia hadith. And then this guy that was on today, right, who was this airy-fairy version of a Muslim that thought, God is like energy floating about. He's a Quranist as well. So, but like you say, stops more and more of them are becoming this. But Thunderous has got a point. If you ask them, well, okay, so certain of these things, how do you make sense of this without the hadith? Then they'd have to explain themselves. And whenever I've seen that, and again, I haven't seen it with Shia Isa, but I've seen it with other Muslims, Quranists, they battle against, Sunni Muslims that accept the hadith. That's a whole topic. I mean, we could do a show on this, I guess. But it looks like we have a Quranist in here right now, so he can. Hey, Ahmed, he could tell you.
All right, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Hello and welcome.
Hey, Ahmed. I mean, we'll sidetrack a little bit if we go into this, but I suppose you can because it's brought up now. Because Ahmed used to be, as I understand it, used to be accept the hadith, and he's now a Quranist. So presumably he could explain that.
What's the question?
Why is it that the hadiths are no longer necessary?
All right, let me just correct something first. Hadith was introduced to my community as something of a history. It was never introduced as something as to be seen as part of revelation. So I never had an issue with it as history, because history can be wrong, it can be right. It's just an attempt. I mean, history is never seen as a fact. So I never had a problem with it in that light. But in terms of revelation, that is not something I've ever accepted.
Okay.
But in terms of the difference between the two, to be honest with you, I'll be frank with you. Um, Without the hadiths, the reason people are really strict with the hadiths and they cannot let it go is because without the hadiths, they do not have a quote unquote religion. In terms of the Quran itself does not have the supposed five pillars. It does not have any symbols or rituals or clergy or special festival days or anything of the kind. So all of that, the whole collectivist, organized religion comes from the hadiths.
So how do you take your religion then if you're rejecting the hadiths?
Okay, to be frank with you, according to the Quran, the Quran alone, it doesn't promote a religion. It promotes a code of conduct, if anything. There is no religion in terms of building, rituals, symbols, clergy that you with. None of that exists in the Quran.
So are you somebody that just believes that Muhammad was the last messenger, that Allah existed, but you don't actually have to perform any ritualistic
Sorry,
actions like taking the Hajj, Salat,
sorry,
Zakat,
could you
etc.?
repeat that? You broke up.
Sorry.
That you broke up.
Can you hear me okay? Am I coming through?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So are you somebody who does not then follow any of the rituals? 5 prayers, giving zakat, Hajj?
Sorry, slowly, Rob.
Is it not coming through very clearly?
No, you're coming through perfect.
Okay, it could be that he's on a mobile phone. So
earlier on.
Can you hear me now? We often have this. I mean, I can rejoin because it might be.
The question is, how do you account for the 5 pillars?
Can the rest of you mute up on one? Maybe. Go on,
You
Rob.
go ahead, Stops. You go ahead,
Can you hear
Stops.
if I talk to you? Can you hear if I talk to you?
It was fine a minute ago.
Are you on an iPhone, Ahmed, or are you on Android phone? Can you hear me now? 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, if you're on an iPhone, it's problematic, especially if you've got Bluetooth headphones on. It's just very difficult. So the question was, if you can hear me now, the question is, are you somebody that follows any rituals? Do you pray 5 times a day? Do you undertake Hajj? Do you do Zakat or Salat or anything like that? Or are you simply a follower of Muhammad and you accept Allah as, the God?
Let me go out and come back in. I can't hear you. I heard you better. Come back.
Okay. He's had that problem before. I'm not sure what phone he's on. He's had that same problem. This is a bit of a sidetrack anyway, because now we're going into, is the Quran sufficient for that?
Okay,
so I guess
let me
Stops.
just continue with, if I look at cruelty towards females now, then we get sentences like, a virgin should not be given in marriage until her permission is granted. And that is something we hear a lot, where women can decide for themselves if they're going to get married or not. But it says how, because now it's about the sexual part, how will she express her permission? And the Prophet said, by keeping silent. And there's another one. O Allah's apostle, should the women be asked for their consent to their marriage? He said, yes. This is where normal Muslims stop, but it continues. A virgin, if asked, feels shy and keeps quiet. He said her silence means her consent. So this is a way that I find this incredibly cruel. So that if a woman is not given the chance to say no, she conceives. It's consent. This doesn't.
I agree
This
with you.
just
That
doesn't
is
come up.
cruel. I
So
agree
this
with you.
was
That's
one
cruel.
example. Okay, then the question. Let's Ahmed. What then? Do, do you follow the rituals as in described in the five pillars?
Okay. All right. What's happened, which was news to me. I'll be honest with you. Okay. First and foremost, there is no rituals. The so-called five pillars are nowhere to be found in the Quran. As a matter of fact, the very first pillar, the Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, that statement is nowhere to be found in the Quran. To make it even worse, the second pillar, which they say is prayer, which they say, I'm sure you guys have heard of the word salah. They say the word salah means prayer. However, if you look into the Arabic um, dictionary, the word salah does not actually mean prayer, nor does the word psalm mean fasting. To be frank with you, they've basically not only have they added the hadiths to create the religion, but they've also changed some of the Arabic words away from its linguistic definitions, and they've defined it according to the concepts that exist in the hadith. So, for example, they'll tell you the word hajj means pilgrimage, but linguistically it means to argue or to challenge. So it has nothing to do with pilgrimage. So, in a nutshell, there is no rituals in the Quran.
Okay. Now, if we go and look at the Quran, because now we've looked at the Hadith.
Mm-hmm.
In the Quran, we find statements like men are a degree above women, men are in charge of women, good women are obedient, your wives are a tilth unto you. Where tilth is the physical condition of soil. Okay, so in relation to planting or growing crop or something. So approach your tilth when and how ye will.
Can I
Now, if
interrupt you
I
there?
well, I want to bring some more examples of what it says before we go into the individual sentences. Is that okay?
Okay.
So remember that I had to take a break from Islam because I was so shocked by a Muslim simply accepting what the Quran said regarding female slaves or captives, where all married women are forbidden except those captives whom your right hand possesses. Okay, so and he said this was not in need of an update, and this is just and valid today in the 21st century. So we have examples of why Islam is in fact misogynistic, i.e., and now we need to go back to the definitions, there's hatred towards women which is built in. So women are seen as the devil in many of the hadith, as tempters, as deceivers. They are deficient in their intelligence and can be treated as objects, as incubators. And then, on the other hand, you have women as caring mothers, as the better people, as the ones with paradise under their feet, and the wives who should be protected and taken care of. But she can be beaten, but not in the face. So women are a bit of a puzzle, having contradictory attributes and descriptions which seem to be, based more in fear than supremacy. And women have a lot of restrictions, and I've seen some of them in the chat now, because women can't have four men because the man, their father, can't be identified. Well, that was 1,000 years ago. And it was important, and it still seems to be important today. I don't understand it, but for Muslims, it seems important to know who the father is. Well, today we can. So why is the man placed above the woman when today we can, without any doubt, identify who the father is? Because we have the technical capabilities. And this is what I just saw in the chat. A man can marry a non-Muslim, where a woman can't. Why is that? Because she is weak. and can be influenced. And then maybe the children will not be brought up in an Islamic fashion. A woman needs her husband's permission for all sorts of things. And
I
because
think
a
stops.
woman was created from a rib, she will always be crooked, and if straightened, will break. 3
I
more.
think.
Do you want to
Do
stop?
you want Ahmed to respond to them, or do you want to try and do
No, I
all of them?
just want
Because
to
he's not
give
going to
these
remember all
examples
of
and then
them.
I'm finished. She's created stupid, afflicted with menstruation, associated with further restrictions. So you have some positives, you have some negatives. So can we ignore the misogyny? That's it. These are just the points I wanted to
Okay,
bring up.
obviously,
I
remember
mean,
that would be applicable to certain Muslims, but Ahmed is not going to accept anything in the Hadith, right? So if we're having a conversation with Ahmed, then you can't bring any of the Hadith. You'd have to apply only the Quranic verses.
No, this was a
well, yeah,
mixture. This was
Rob
Quran
pretty
and Hadith.
much had. I was gonna say there's a lot of conflation going on there with the Quran and the Hadith, and
Yes,
I don't
correct.
desire to defend the Hadith. So as for
Okay.
the if I may, when it speaks about one having a degree of responsibility over the other, it is very specific in terms of when the mother is looked after the child for the first 2 years. Then the upkeep of the child and the mother of their it's very specific on that very specific role, because that is the
But
only time
Ahmed, why are you assuming?
that
Yeah, but why are you assuming there's a child? Why are you assuming there's a child?
stops.
Yes?
Can you hear stops? Ahmed, can you hear anybody?
Well, I can hear
Yeah,
everybody.
Well,
I can hear everybody as well. Can you hear any of us, Ahmed? Ahmed, can you hear any
yes,
of
I can
us?
hear you. Yes, I can hear you, Rob.
Okay,
Okay,
it's a
why
huge
do you
lag there.
assume a
Well,
child?
A
Why do you assume a
was
child?
well. I
There's a
want
huge lag there.
to see when. Okay, I'll come out
Go on,
again.
speak, Ahmed. I just think there's a long lag between us speaking and you hearing us. Go ahead.
Oh, it's jumped over here. Because what he's doing is what so many Muslims do. And that is they automatically bring up an example which includes a child, that the mother is capable of bearing the child. Absolutely. I agree with that. But what about today's situation where you can have a couple consisting only of husband and wife? Why should the husband, if you have husband and wife, why should the husband automatically be in charge of the woman? Like I said, what if a female captain flies me from Doha to Dubai? Why can't she be earning more money than the man? And why should the man still be in charge of the wife? Why should a man be a degree above a woman? That doesn't make sense. And this cop out now that there's a child and the woman can look after the child better. That's bullshit. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get him down to a non-child environment example so that we can talk about that. Okay, he's
I mean, there
coming
could be
back
many
on.
responses, right? There could be many responses. One of them could be, well, they disagree with modern society, right? So that could be a response. And say, well, why do you guys think that this is a better society? So a Muslim could bring that sort of response, right? And say flying as a captain, well, she shouldn't be a captain, and
So,
something like that.
yeah, but this is
Not
the only way
everybody's going to
out.
say that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, he's
Okay,
rejoined. So yeah,
Ahmed,
there's lag
you
time
had an
there.
example where you said the woman can care for the child. Why are you inserting a child into the example? Why not take a couple as man and a woman?
Right, the inserted a child is because when the Quran speaks of the relationship between a man and a woman, it speaks of a few things that are very specific. Number one, it speaks of the fact that in order to marry a woman, a man must give her a gift, or man must man must do the spending in order for the marriage to take place. Number one. And number two, and number two, it speaks of the fact that a woman, because she's married to a man, and a man is has provided in order for this marriage to happen, she is obliged not to commit adultery. Number two, and number when a woman has a child, first 2 years is because the Quran is very specific in terms of a mother should breastfeed a child up to 2 years. So, and it says during that time, it's clear in the Quran, during that time, the upkeep of the child and the mother is on the father. So when it speaks about a degree of responsibility over the other, it is very specific in that context.
So
Um,
why does it say men are a degree above women?
what I don't understand is you mentioned about the gift of the dowry, but that's synonymous with a lot of cultures, not Islam. So we can remove that from the discussion because even Caucasian cultures have a principle of one family giving a gift to the other family if the son's going to be marrying the daughter. That's not just unique to Islam. That was in pre-existence before Muhammad came along
No,
with
but
this.
no one's arguing about uniqueness, though. I'm just
But
simply saying what it
you're
says in the Quran.
yeah, but what it says in the Quran is nothing more than a repeat of what was already taking place in history.
Yeah, but we're not having that discussion at the moment. We're not saying, oh, is the Quran unique or did it copy somewhere else? And that's not the discussion here. I'm
No,
simply trying to make clear when it speaks about a man having a degree of responsibility over the woman, it is in a very specific context. That's all.
but why did you bring that up then?
Because those are the few times that the Quran speaks of men and women. So it speaks of dowry, it speaks of not adultery, and it speaks of the responsibilities once there is a child involved. That's
So
all.
a woman's not to commit adultery. What about the man committed adultery?
That's a very good question. I'll be honest
Thank
with
you.
you. No, that's a good question. I'll be honest with you. I don't think it's the same. But that's just my personal opinion. If I'm going to be frank with you, the Quran does not talk about a man committing adultery as such. However, it does say that a man, both men and women should be married before they have sex. So when it speaks about adultery, yes, it is very specific in terms of it talking about women, and that's because of what can happen if a woman commits adultery. A man could be raising another man's child. Now, if a man goes and commits quote unquote adultery, a woman is not going to have the same consequence as a man would if a woman cheated. That's just a fact. It's not the same if a man cheats or if a woman cheats.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, and you guys know all three of you probably know the Quran even better than I do. But what about the in times of war, right? We've got the verse, if I remember correctly, with the coitus interruptus, where is that the Hadith or the Quran? Remind me.
That's
Hadith.
hadith.
That's Hadith, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, no, never mind then. We'll leave it because the sex slaves thing is a different thing. And
Okay,
presumably they
but
never took male sex slaves anyway. So
no. But
that's
Ahmed,
a separate thing.
can you just answer one simple question? Do you agree that the ideology of Islam is misogynistic?
The ideology of Islam to me is the Quran. And if anyone can point out where the Quran is misogynistic, please do so. If you
Okay,
want
this
to
is
talk
what I'm
about the
doing. This
hadith,
is
I'm not going to.
okay. So you are saying it is not misogynistic.
The Quran itself, to my knowledge, no.
Okay. If it says
But that's
men
just
are a
speaking for the
degree
Quran. I'm
above
not
women,
speaking to the
what
hadith.
is that?
I just told you that is literally in responsibility. As a
It
matter
doesn't
of,
say
and
so.
another thing, okay, and another thing you got to bear in mind is I've already explained to you that the translations have been sort of doctored to go in line with the hadith. So do
Okay.
not take everything that you see in the translation as gospel. That's not the
So
case.
does it say men are in charge of women? Yes or no?
Men are in charge of women, yes, but the context is also very clear, so you cannot divorce it from the context.
So there is a context in which it is okay that men are in charge of women.
Yes, when a woman is busy with the child, you are responsible for her. That's just common sense. How how is a woman gonna be at home with a child and you're not gonna provide for her? Of course you're gonna provide for her. But
You're
see
creating
what you're
a
doing.
specific
No, 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 no,
example
no.
here.
What you're doing. No, but
Yeah, but
one
Ahmed,
second,
you
one
are
second. What you're
creating a very
doing,
specific example which is not catered for in the Quran. The Quran does not say that. There is no
it is
restriction in the
very, it
Quran on
is
this.
catered for in the Quran.
No, it is not.
Hold
No.
on. Stops. I'll ask you this. Number one, the in terms of a woman, when a woman is looking after a child for the first 2 years while she is encouraged to breastfeed, the man is responsible for her, for her and the child's upkeep. That is very, very in bold letters in the Quran. Do you want me to bring? Do you want me to bring you the verses?
It says
I can bring you the verses. It's not an issue.
it says men are in charge of women. It does not say under certain conditions it could be that the wife
Okay.
cannot be I don't know, earning money, or she is preoccupied with children, or she is sick in bed, or she is whatever, and then the man
Alright.
must look after her. It doesn't
Can you
say
give us
that.
the
It says
reference?
men are in
Stops. Hold on,
charge.
one minute. Stops.
What's the
I've
reference?
got evidence from the Quran. Stops. Check this out. This is the difference between me and you. I've got evidence from the Quran. I can produce you verses right now that talks about every single thing that I said verbatim. Could you
Yeah,
give
but
me a single verse from the Quran that gives you the indication that the charge of a man of his wife is speaking of anything besides the responsibility that is found in the Quran?
but
Could you
he
give me
has.
anything that indicates your opinion? Because I can bring you evidence.
Yeah, but he has. But you've already said that the translations of the Quran are already corrupted and misleading. So it doesn't matter what Stop says or I say or Rob says. If we do bring something out, you're going to turn and say, "Well, it's a dishonest translation of the Quran."
That's not a problem though, because there is something called the dictionary. If something looks dodgy, we can simply pull out the Arabic dictionary.
Okay,
We can
Okay,
look at the root
I'm
words.
going to.
We can
I'm
Thunderous.
going to
we can
remove
look at the
myself.
root
Let's
words of
I'm
every
going to
word.
remove myself.
let me
Okay.
put his feet
not
to
a
the
problem.
fire. Let's see. If it says in the Quran, men are in charge of women because Allah made the one of them to excel the other. And that's
Which
it.
verse
And
is
they
that,
because
Stops?
434.
Yes,
And then
it
it
is true.
says,
Men are not as vulnerable as women. That's a fact.
it's not the point. Why does it
No, but
say
it's true.
men are in charge of women?
Okay, I'm gonna give you a chance. Without you, can you bring out anything from the Quran that gives you the idea that men being in charge of women is anything besides protection and provision when necessary? Could you give me anything from the Quran?
I just did.
If you don't remember this, if you can't give me anything from the Quran, then you're just being biased.
I just did.
No. You gave me a quote, and then you're trying to indicate something from that quote that is not valid.
I'm not
If
trying to
what you're
indicate. I'm
indicating is
reading
valid,
the Quran. The Quran says men are in charge of women because Allah has made the one of them to excel the other.
yes, men
And
are
then
not
it
as
says,
vulnerable
and
as
because they spend of their property for the support and whatever, because they spend of their property. And what? And then it
yeah.
says, good women are obedient. Good women are obedient. Is that misogynistic?
Okay. The word, all right. Again, you're
Is it
choosing very
misogynistic to
specific
say good
translations.
women are obedient?
No.
No.
The obedience again. Look. What you keep doing, Stops here, is you're trying to sensationalize the word in charge, number one, and you're trying to sensationalize the word obedient. However, the context is very clear from the Quran that one speaks of obviously women not committing adultery, and two speaks of when a woman is looking after a child, the responsibility of looking after the child in that woman falls upon the man. Both evidences can be found in the Quran. All you're doing is sensationalizing words. That's childish.
I'm reading the Quran.
No, but you're sensationalizing specific words.
I'm not
Why are you
sensationalizing
not looking
anything.
at
I'm
the
just
context?
reading the Quran.
No, you're reading a verse. That's not reading the Quran.
What do you want to
The
do? Do you
Quran
want
is
to
more
read the
than
whole
just
book
a
now?
verse. No, 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 no,
Ahmed,
no. You read a. There's no such thing as reading an isolated verse. Read the context. Why don't you do that?
Ahmed, do you accept
Because
the
the Quran
tafsirs?
does not tell me that I need to read the context every time. The Quran was written by a
That's how
God. A
you
God
read.
should not
No, no,
need
no
a
one needs to
context.
tell you. No one needs to tell you. Stops. No one needs to tell you to read the context. It's how you read anything. You don't read something and go, oh, I don't need to read the context. Everything's got a context.
That's
Can't
wrong.
avoid the context.
That is false.
What? That everything's got a context.
Yes.
That's false. There's things
Yes.
without a context.
Yes.
Okay, but the Quran isn't one of those. How about that?
That's wrong.
Okay, but I think Rob was asking me a question. Stop.
No, I was trying to find out why you
very
think
low
there's
there.
no misogyny in there. You asked me to bring a sentence from the Quran. I did, and now you're changing your tune. So,
No, I'm
what
not.
is it that you need? I told you that men are a degree above women. There is no
Men
context
are
in which
that.
there is no context in which this would make sense. It does not make
Should I tell you the
sense
context
that
that it
a
does make?
man
Let
can
me
have
give you the
4
context that
wives,
it
but
makes
the
sense.
wife cannot have 4
Let me
men.
give.
There is no context
Stops.
where this can be
Let me.
just.
No, okay. Now you're trying to bombard me with a lot of stuff. Let me just
Yes,
deal with one
because
by
you
one.
asked for
It's very
you
easy.
asked for quotes. I'm
No,
giving you
because you're doing
quotes.
that on purpose. You're doing that
Of
on
course I
purpose.
am.
Stops. This is childish. Stops. Listen. First and foremost, you asked a question. You said there is no context where men. Let's go with your translation. Let's say where men are above women. Let's go with that translation. Okay. You said there is no context where that is the case. You are wrong there, and that's very childish of you to even insinuate that. Because when a woman is pregnant, in every single measure, you have it. You have an advantage over her in terms of survival. You can provide and protect for yourself better than she can in that position. When a woman is looking after a child, when she's busy looking after a child, why do you think feminists argue about equal pay and trying to change the system and everything? Because you have an advantage over women when women are busy looking after a child. That's just a fact. You get to earn money when she can't. So you have an advantage over her.
So how does that give me a degree above a woman?
Because she is dependent on you. When she's in that position, she is dependent on you.
That's bullshit.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So how's she gonna look after a child and earn a living at the same time?
Hang on, is she pregnant or has she had a child?
I'm saying she had a child. How's she gonna look
So she's
after
no
it?
longer pregnant.
Or even heavily pregnant. If you want, you can add that. That's not a problem. You cannot deny that there are moments. You cannot deny that there are moments in life where women are dependent in men. You can't deny that.
That's not the point. That's not what the Quran says.
That is the point. You asked when are men a degree above women? I just told you men are barely dependent on women. However, women can be in situations in life where they are dependent in men.
A man is
that a
totally
lie?
dependent on a woman because if there's no woman, he can't get born.
Huh? I'm not going to deny that we need women, but etc. etc. But what I'm talking about survival. Women literally need men for survival in certain circumstances,
No, we are
especially when
talking.
she's looking after a child.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, but Ahmed, Ahmed, there have been examples in history where women alone have been pregnant, have given birth, and continue to survive. So it's simply not the case that a woman, even if she's pregnant, cannot survive without a man.
But Rob, what I'm saying is when she's looking after a child, she cannot look after a child and earn a living at the same time.
She
Even
does.
if
She gets
it is
paid.
difficult.
She gets
Even if
paid.
who's gonna look after the child? Are we really
The
having this
woman
argument right now?
looks after the child and gets paid. It's called maternity leave.
Maternity leave. So when she gets maternity leave, is she not getting provided for by somebody? She's
No.
always listen. All I'm saying to you is when a woman is looking after a child, she is dependent. Seriously, are we having this argument?
Because you're being
Ahmed,
nonsensical. Have you never heard of single mothers?
Have you never heard of child benefit? Have you never heard of child maintenance? They are
You see,
dependent.
you get them. You get a lot of different things. What you are
But
doing is
that's
you're singling
dependency,
out
isn't
one
it?
single thing and making it the norm. That's not true. So
But
you
oh,
get
okay.
women who are pregnant, they get paid. They can carry on working, they get
Yeah,
paid
but
the same. It's not that a woman who is pregnant suddenly gets paid a lot less. Then she gives birth, she goes
when
on
you're saying
maternity
first and
leave, and her
foremost,
payment continues. So she can look after herself and look after the kid. So where's the problem? It does not mean
look,
that now
but
suddenly a man,
look,
some arbitrary man, must be a step above this woman just because she has a child.
I can't believe we're having this
okay, well,
conversation.
let's just make sure we're all talking on the same page here because we're jumping around a little bit. So, Ahmed, are you making the claim that that a pregnant woman or a woman with a child is dependent on a man today, or are you making the claim that was the case in the 7th century or before? When are you making the claim? For when?
Not necessarily, when she's pregnant, but when she's had a child, especially the early stages, a woman will be dependent on a man.
Are you
Now,
talking about when though? What period
I
of
was about
time?
to
Are you talking
clarify
all
that.
time or just
I
in
was,
Muhammad's time?
uh, in any, you know what? Let me go as far as this. In all times, when a woman is looking after a child, especially the early stages, she will always be dependent. I know you guys don't like a man, but even if you trade a man with the government, she's still dependent. All you're doing is you traded the man with the government. It's still the
Yeah,
dependency, is
but
it not?
you're saying being dependent is the same
You
as
haven't
being a
made the
degree above
difference.
them. That's not the case. That's not true. You cannot equate
No,
the
but
two.
okay, but then now what you're doing is you're highlighting the very specific translations that they chose to use. I guarantee you, if I look up the Arabic root words in the Quran, I guarantee you they will not translate as such. So there's no need for you to even milk that, because I guarantee you it won't be the case.
What are you
Fact
changing
of the
to now?
matter is, sorry.
You're changing to something else now. You're now claiming that the Arabic words for Surah 434 doesn't say what it says.
I think the only conclusion I can draw in this discussion is that the only dependency a woman has of a man in the Islamic case is when a man marries a child and he gets the child pregnant. In that case, everything he says does fit.
I mean,
Presumably,
come on,
Ahmed's
guys.
talking about an older woman.
You being a bit extreme to deny this, guys.
Ahmed, do you not think? Hang on,
I'm
Ahmed, do you not
sure
think?
I'm sure Aisha would agree. Aisha would agree with everything you've got to say.
But Ahmed, do you not think that there've been women in the past that whose husbands have died, they've given birth to babies, and they've been able to survive without somebody else's help? Do you think that has not happened in the history of humankind?
I'm sure there has been, but I'm sure
Okay.
if she had a choice,
Okay, and
she
so
wouldn't
now
have
it's about
chosen that.
choice. Okay, so now you're talking about a choice, but
No,
that's not what you were originally arguing. You were originally arguing, as I understood it, that it was impossible for a woman. She had to be dependent either during pregnancy or directly after pregnancy. She was dependent and she could not survive. That's what I understood you to be saying. And I think you agree that there are women that can do this, give birth, and directly after birth, they're not going to die. They're going to be able to go out there, pick some corn, do whatever the case is, and feed themselves and their child to survive. Yes, it's maybe not what they choose, but the point that you seem to be making is that they couldn't do this.
Yeah, but this is also
no.
predicated on the fact that pre-Islamic, that this wasn't taking place pre-Islamic times. This is also like an advancement post-Islamic. So for this to make any sense, and what you're saying then, that the world prior to the Quran and this revelation was in a poor state because men weren't looking after their women until Islam came along and corrected the situation. That's
Well,
what.
no. I mean, I
Because you're
wouldn't say
basically
that
saying, well,
men weren't
without
looking.
Islam, you're basically implying without Islam, men were not looking after their women and women weren't surviving until Islam came along and corrected the situation for society. When it's kind of clear that pre-Islamic times and post-Islamic times, without Islam, men and the relation between men and women has been carrying on quite sufficiently. Islam hasn't come
Yeah.
across come along and improve the situation for women with or without marriage or with or without children.
Okay, but I think unfortunately you're making this unnecessarily sectarian, because this is just simply a matter of theism. Now, the argument of theism is always that man needs man needs theism in order for man to remember to be upright and moral. So the argument of the Quran is simply that people are not necessarily. Obviously, no one is saying that no one in Arabia is looking after their child, but some may not be looking after their duties. So the argument of the Quran is to
But that
remind
happens
people
in Islam as
to
well. You're suggesting that every man who
what.
calls himself a Muslim is looking after his child and his wife, then you're going to be greatly mistaken by that, because clear evidence shows that that is not the case in Islamic worlds, for instance, when women are being treated in the way that you're suggesting that they should be, and children should be
Okay,
treated
but
in.
now you're changing the
So to
argument
suggest
though.
Islam's
Now you're
going
talking
along
about people.
with theism and is improved the situation, because in some cases where there isn't theism, that hasn't been taken the case. Well, what we're seeing in the Western world is that there are more cases where there isn't theism. Children and women are being treated better because in non-theistic situations, you have laws and situations and NGOs that have been set up to protect women and children. We do not find that in the Islamic world, and Islam hasn't come along and improved the situation for them.
Okay, I can see now. Now you're conflating too many things. Like I'm not defending people. Like people, whether they're Muslim, whether they're atheist, whatever label they have, people do whatever they do, and for whatever reasons they do what people do. About is what it says in the Quran. Now I'm surprised that we're actually having this debate over the simple fact that when a woman is in a vulnerable position of looking after a child, a man should be providing and protecting them. Why on earth that's a discussion I don't understand? Like, is that not common
Because
sense?
You brought it up.
If it's common sense, then why does Allah have to come along and tell mankind if it's common sense? Because it's already been taking place. This seems like a needless verse. It seems like this is in heaven before Allah created the universe. This ayah is in the Quran. What I'm saying is, for thousands of years before this verse was revealed, mankind with women and children has always been carried on the way it is today. This ayah has not improved anything as far as mankind is concerned.
Okay, I think to be fair,
again, I don't think you understand. Look, the Quran does not call itself something new. The Quran calls itself a reminder. So it's simply reminding people of something that they should have already known or should know internally.
But mankind will have
so I
to
don't
forgotten
understand.
it. For it to be a reminder, mankind will have to have forgotten it. Hence, you only need reminding when you're forgetting or forgotten something. Otherwise, you don't need the reminder. So Islam hasn't come along and reminded anybody of anything, because it was always going on and it's still going on. And the Quran is only for those who apply Islam. The rest of the Muslim world don't have the Quran, and they don't need this ayah, and certainly they're not using this ayah as far as their own lives are concerned. So that Islam hasn't reminded anybody of anything, and it hasn't improved the lot of anybody.
Look. First and foremost, you got to remember where the Quran was sent. The Quran was sent to Arabia, and Arabia did not.
But it was in heaven before it came on.
Give me a minute. Just give me a minute. The Quran was sent to Arabia, and Arabia did not receive revelations before. So that's one thing. So they weren't necessarily, fully up to date with what they're supposed to know. Secondly, I don't understand. 1 minute we're arguing about a man should not necessarily provide for his wife. Next minute we're arguing about why are reminders being sent. Is that your argument?
guys, can we stick on one thing?
Yeah.
I mean, talking about the veracity of the Quran at this moment probably isn't that useful. The verse that was brought up is 434, and you and Stops you were having the conversation with Stops, and the point was put to you that do you not think that men being in charge of women, for want of a better word, is misogynistic? And you said no. And then you brought up the example of when a woman is pregnant or she's just had a child, at that stage she's dependent on a man, therefore he would be, I don't know how you still get to him being superior or him being over her, but what
all you her provision.
Yeah, but all you could argue is that, hey, he could provide for her, but you've also agreed that there have been women in history, clearly, that have been able to survive without a man. So really, now your argument becomes, hey, it's preferable to have a man there when you're pregnant or you've just given birth. And we can all agree that's probably preferable. But to make the argument that a woman can't survive, I don't think is is accurate. So now you're left in the position of going, okay, it's preferable to have a man there to support a woman when she's pregnant. But that still doesn't get you to the point that stops Major, which is why should he be, what's the word? Not superior. What's the word?
The maintainer and a degree
Charge.
over them.
Yeah, like a degree over her, because you're trying to argue that the fact that he has to support her means that he has a degree over her. And I don't think that those two things are synonymous. So maybe you can give us your thought process as to why you think they are synonymous.
Who has an easier life, a woman with a child,
That's
or,
not
or
the
a man
point.
without a child?
That's not the point.
No, but
Okay,
no, but
let's go with
that
your
is the
thing.
point. The question.
Well, let's just
Look,
go with
the
your thing.
words
Let's go,
here.
Ahmed.
Look,
Let's go with your
guys,
thing.
the
Let's
word
suggest
here
in you,
is a degree. Yeah.
Ahmed. Let's just go with your thing for now and suggest that a woman has it easier. I'm not sure that's the case. My wife has given birth. I don't think that it was easier, and especially
No, I
not
said a
easier.
man has it easier. I'm not saying a woman has it easier.
Oh,
I'm
you're
saying
suggesting a man has it easier.
Yes, that's the degree that a man has over a woman.
Have you
Because a
had
woman
children,
can
Ahmed?
be in
Have
a
you had
vulnerable
children?
position. Look, hear me out, guys. I'm simply saying, listen, the question here is why does it say that a man has a degree over the woman? It's very simple. A woman can be in a vulnerable position that a man is not necessarily in. For such as when a woman is pregnant, a woman can be pregnant and she could be looking after a child. A man is not necessarily in that position. Therefore, life is easier to you than it is to her.
Well, that may or may not be
Is
the
that wrong?
case. Okay, but that may or may not be the case. So you're arguing that if it's easier for him,
Rob,
that's what
you're a
translates.
father, you know?
Okay, but let me just make sure I understand what you're thinking in your head here. Are you suggesting that if it's easier for a man when she's vulnerable, that means that he is I keep forgetting the word. What's the word there? He's overseeing her.
A degree above
Yeah, he's
and in
obliged to look
charge.
after her. Because
Okay, but
look. She would not be pregnant and have had a child and be looking after this child had it not been for him. He put her in that vulnerable position. So therefore,
No,
it
that's
is
also
now
bullshit.
incumbent on him. It's now incumbent on him to look after her. I
No,
really don't know
no.
why this
Why?
conversation is so
No, it's
difficult.
not that way. It is not that way. You are bringing up very, very specific examples which you cannot generalize. In general, it is
I
not the
know I can
case
because it's in
that
the
every
Quran.
time a woman is pregnant, that the same guy who impregnated her is also the one who's going to maintain everything. This is not true.
Sorry, the one who mated with her is also going to be the one maintaining.
Not necessarily.
He should be.
But he is
He should
not.
be.
Oh,
No,
Jesus.
but look, but here it is. The Quran is all about God and justice and all the rest of it. So obviously, if you're gonna impregnate a woman, obviously the responsibility is on you. Who else should it be on? You did it. You want another
There,
man to be responsible for your child?
there are single mothers.
But it's wrong. It's not moral, though, is it?
This
Any
is not
man
the
that
point. The
impregnates a
point
woman,
is that the Quran is misogynistic in its way of maintaining that the man is in charge and a degree of the woman. It
this
doesn't
is
say that there is a specific situation if the man is
it
responsible
does
and then
say.
he should do that. No, I gave you the sentence. You said, well, maybe the degree is the wrong way. Well, what is darajatun? It is a degree. And what is
You're you're
alahina? It is over them. So you
you're
can't
really
even go out over the
you're
Arabic and say,
milking.
oh, it's the wrong
No, no.
translation. It doesn't work,
Stop,
Ahmed.
stop, stop. Your argument is reduced to milking very specific words. That's
No,
sad.
I'm
You
looking at the
all you're
Quran.
doing
I'm
is milking.
asking,
It says
why
the
is
word
it
charge
not
here. No, but
misogynistic?
what you're doing, look. What you're doing is you're sensationalizing. It says the word charge here. So let me milk that for all it's worth. And it says the word degree over the other. So let me milk that all for what
Okay,
it's
what
worth.
do you want it to
That's
say?
all you're doing.
Okay, what do you
It's not
think it
really
says?
complicated what you're coming up with.
What do you think it says?
I have the entire context, which you
Okay,
hold on.
what do you
See,
think
that's
it
the
says?
interesting thing. Why are you not interested in the context?
Because there
Why?
is no
Look,
context.
notice this. Notice this. Stops here. You're literally only interested in two words. One is charge. The other one is degree. That's all you're interested in, and you're ignoring the entire
Okay,
context. You're ignoring
then
everything
show
else.
me the context. Show me the context.
You want me to bring you the breastfeeding for 2 years? You want me to bring you the fact that man is
It doesn't
responsible
say
for the woman,
breastfeeding.
for
That's
the
not.
woman's
It doesn't
provision?
say
I can
that.
bring you all of that.
It doesn't
Okay,
say
no problem. Give me
breastfeeding.
2 seconds.
You should imply
All
that.
right, no problem. I'll bring that for you. Once I bring that, is this discussion done?
Let me just check,
Ahmed,
We can
Ahmed.
jump somewhere
Ahmed, what
else.
you are doing now is you're saying that in Quran 434 it says one thing, and then we have to go to sentence 58 in chapter number 58 or something to find another word, and then we have to jump to chapter
You're
number 2 and find a word in there, and this then is the context.
welcome
So
to the
what you are
Quran, my
doing
friend.
is you're cherry
Welcome to
picking
the Quran.
words from
No,
the
no.
Quran to create a context that does not exist. The Quran does not
Okay.
say
First
the
and
men
foremost,
are the maintainers of women. Look up chapter 53, sentence 4, and then refer to chapter 2, number 58. It doesn't say that.
okay.
It says men
All
are a
right.
degree above
First and
women.
foremost,
Full stop.
first and foremost, there is not a single story in the Quran that exists only in one chapter. And I know
Yes,
you
there
know
is.
this because you have been reading the
I mean,
Quran.
why are you
But
talking
hold on, hold
shit?
on. Hold on. And I know you know this because you have been reading the Quran. It's
Okay, how many
literally
times does it say
throughout
that
the
you can beat
Quran.
your women?
It never uses the word be. Now, hear me out, please.
It
Let's
does
not jump
actually.
from one place to another. Let's not jump from one place to another, please, man.
Well, you
Really
are
have
bringing this up. You
look.
are doing this.
1 minute, please. Stops. This argument has to die because it's too
It
simplistic and it's
can't.
too pathetic.
It's in the
Because
Quran. You can't make the
tell you, let me
Quran die.
show you how easily it dies. Let me show you how easily it dies. If you say that I'm going to go from one chapter to another chapter to another chapter to sort of fix this idea of that I'm trying to paint, okay, no problem. If that is the case, if I can do that with the Quran, I dare you to do that. You go and find me a single context in the Quran that indicates what you're trying to indicate with these two specific words. Go ahead. Find in the Quran where you can use the entire Quran, like literally conjure up an entire context of your choosing, as long as you're using the Quran, and fix it to mean a charge or degree of a woman in a misogynistic fashion. Go ahead, do it.
Okay, so let me just check something with you, Ahmed. Do you accept tafsirs?
No.
Of course not, because they're going to challenge the narrative. You don't get it yet. Have you not listened to this guy?
I do not accept tafsirs or hadiths.
Of
Yes.
course he
And I'll
doesn't.
tell you like this. Without tafsirs and hadiths, you'll struggle to find a fault in the Quran. But go ahead.
Well, the problem is, Ahmed, if you don't accept any of these things, then it's your interpretation against ours. And as Stop
No.
said, if you're going to go to other verses, you don't have a mandate to do this. You're doing it on your own back.
Sorry?
If you're not going to
I don't
accept
have a mandate.
tafsirs or scholars or hadith,
Yeah.
and you're going to say, hey, but look, I've got another verse that shows why this isn't misogyny, then the question that would be asked you is, well, why are you selecting that verse? And how is it that that verse relates to the other one? Now you're going to have to give us your subjective opinion on this. And why should somebody else accept that? So if you're not going to accept any other authority or any other scholarly advice other than your opinion on the Quran, why should somebody else accept that? Accept your version is
Okay.
what I mean.
All right. Good question. First and foremost, I'm not happy with the idea that I have an interpretation or anything subjective, because the words that are used in the Quran have objective definitions. I will not go beyond those objective definitions. Number one. Number two, I will not insert anything into the Quran, nor will I take anything away from the Quran. Nor will I conjure up a context that anybody that reads the Quran will not accept. So, as far as I'm concerned, the Quran is objective enough. There's no reason to say that the Quran as a book is not objective. However, other books written by other men all of a sudden make it objective. Makes no sense.
Okay, but you said to Stops that you have evidence to show that 434 is specifically relating and only, as I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, only relating to men being in charge or men being a degree above women when a woman is pregnant or has just given birth. Is that correct?
To be honest with you, I would have to retract the pregnancy part because that's just my own thought there. I'll admit. The only thing that's in the Quran is when a woman's had a child. So I'll
And
retract the pregnancy part. What's
okay,
in the Quran is when a woman's had a child.
okay. So you have another verse where a woman has given birth to a
What I
child.
will say, what I will say, Rob. Sorry to interrupt you. What I will say is what I'm saying to Stops is that I am prepared to pluck out every single verse in the Quran that speaks of men and women. Every single verse in the Quran. And when we look at every single verse in the Quran, the only thing that will stand out, that will be highlighted in terms of the roles of man and women is going to be one, the dowry, and two, the who does the provision and the protection, and at what time, and what role a mother, and what is expected of a mother when she is if she is to breastfeed her child. It's up to 2 years. So what I'm saying is I'm prepared to single verse in the Quran, and basically I'm not even gonna say anything. I'll give it to him to show me where the degree over the woman or over the woman could have anything to do with anything else besides the child, considering we have of man and woman. To hand it to him.
Okay, okay.
Could it
I
be
mean,
any other way around?
you go ahead, Stops.
No, it's just,
Are
could
you
it
with
be
me,
any other way
Rob?
around? Could it be that there is no other reason for this, that it just says men are the maintainers of women, or a degree above them? Is that possible?
Guys, give me 1 minute. I'll be right back.
There's so much for the book made clear and easy to understand.
Now, guys, I've got a problem because I wanted to share screen the Quran translation using the root, and for some odd reason, it says that Chrome is not responding. And I can either close the program or wait, but I, at the moment, am unable to do anything, and I'm shit scared if I say close the program that he's going to close all of Google Chrome.
Yeah, it probably will. Stops. Can you not do it on another thing? I've actually got the root open of 434 here because the moment Ahmed went into that, I immediately went to the root. I mean, obviously, I looked at the tafsirs first, and the tafsirs are seemingly quite plain, at least with Ibn Abbas, Asra, Al-Jalalain, that
Yes,
men are in charge and they have authority over women, disciplining them and keeping them in check because that is which God has preferred the one over the
exactly,
other. That is
exactly.
because God has given them the advantage over women in knowledge, reason, authority, and otherwise, and because of what they expend on them, the women, of their property. So because they're spending, it's like they're in charge of women. So it's almost like,
Exactly.
certainly in that interpretation, and even
Yeah.
Asra says that men stand over women, though through that which God has preferred some of them over others, and that which they expend of their wealth. So it seems like one of the reasons why they are in charge is because they're spending money. So hey, it's almost like if I bought something for you, I now have authority over you. That's what
Yeah.
seems to be a plain reading of at least those two, and even Ibn Abbas says something similar.
And
I
that's
think,
exactly what it says in 434, because they spend out of their property. So this is exactly the sentiment. But
can I,
in
can I
228, a degree above them, it is just a general thing that women are less in the whole ranking of everything.
Can I just
Go
add
ahead.
on as well that
Yeah.
when you consider Muhammad married his boss, so pre-Islamic times, women were in a better state than in post-Muhammad times, and you can see that by Khadija. Khadija is the standard by what Arabia, as far as women, should be measured by, because pre-Islamic times, women had respect, they had authority, they had businesses, they were employers, and they were clearly seen as intelligent human beings with respect and community contribution. Whereas post-Muhammad times, women are reduced to just chattel. That is a historical fact based on the Quran and Islamic's own sources. So when we're looking at and in these verses that we keep talking about, well, women, they're to look after and the dowry and that, this is just irrelevant. Forgive my language, but irrelevant bullshit because you don't need Islam to tell you that, because those things were practiced by non-Arabians even till now.
Yeah.
So Islam hasn't come along and improved women with these ayah. It's actually subjugated women. And Khadija is your measuring line to prove that from.
And to go even further, if Rob goes into the text a little bit further, you will see that it is said that women are actually created stupid.
But the other thing we can do on 434, right? I can read you out the root. I've got that here. Or you could share screen on another browser stops and read out the root there.
No, I can't, because everything Chrome at the moment is grayed out. I can't move.
All right, so let me,
do anything
I'm going to read something. For those who are listening, if you go to Quran X and you go to Surah 434 and you type in root, these are the Arabic direct English translation words. So when I read it now, it's not going to be grammatically correct in English, but it's going to be the exact translation as I understand. Is that correct, Slops?
Yeah.
Okay. So here is 434.
More reliable version, because they give you the roots.
Yeah. So I'm going to read you the exact words here. I'll say the bits in brackets, because there's bits in brackets to try and make it make sense. So I'll just say bracket, word, and then I'll just carry on. So bracket the, men, bracket are protectors. So if I'm actually going to, that's going to make it complicated. I'm just going to read the words out exactly as they are here in the root. Men protectors of the woman, because bestowed Allah some of them over others, and because they spend from their wealth. So the righteous woman, obedient, guarding in the unseen that which them to guard, in brackets orders, them to guard. Allah and those...
Leave it there. Otherwise it gets too complicated.
Okay. Because we're getting to the beating part there.
Yeah, exactly. I want to leave that out for next time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because there's no way you can get out of that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so it certainly, again, and it uses different words there, but it's bestowed upon them, some of them over others, and because they spend from their wealth. So Ahmed is trying to argue that what it means by over is that he's got an easier job somehow, and that allows him to be over her in some way, i.e. what he's really saying is that he's supporting her, and that's what over means according to him. But
the point that I'm trying to make is, if I have a couple, both of them are captains of the airline, both of them fly the same kind of aircraft, both of them fly between Doha and Dubai, why should one of them, because he is the male, be above the female if she's doing the same identical job with the same identical training with the same level of competence?
Okay, but I think that's slightly different, though, because I think some Muslims are going to say that's fine, right?
But not according to the Quran. This is the problem.
Okay, but that's why I asked Ahmed, okay, and he wasn't clear on it. Because is he talking about in the time of Muhammad, or is he talking about for all time?
And that's
but
good.
If they say it's a time of Muhammad, I think even then we can challenge them on this, right? But if it's for all time, I think obviously that doesn't stack up, right? Because women are just as capable as men.
How can Muhammad be a degree above Khadija?
Yeah, but even today, right, women are as capable as men in many things. Obviously, what they lack is physical strength and certain physical abilities. You could even argue in some way maybe some logical or critical thinking, but that's a very dodgy claim to make. I wouldn't necessarily make that claim. But certainly a woman doesn't require a man by today's standards, especially in any first world country. So even if she got pregnant, even if she did it via a sperm bank and didn't even have a man in her life, she doesn't require a man to take care of her, right? Somebody will. So his argument will be, okay, if it's not the man, then it's somebody taking care of her. But that's not necessarily the case either, right? If she's worked hard and then decides, okay, I don't want a man in my life, but I just want to get pregnant via a sperm bank or whatever the case is, and I have enough wealth of my own that I built up, like Khadija, as you say, then a man is not required. So I guess it depends on which. I think it's going to be much harder for him to argue this is the case for all time. So maybe we need to sort of pin it back to Muhammad's time and then seek to challenge it in that time, or at least maybe on the next episode or whatever the case is. Because I don't think it's strong.
What about all the other genders? Does the Quran cater for them?
No.
No. Well, obviously they think that's just like a deficiency, right? That's like a mental problem. So they're not even going to accept other genders. That's just that's like humans having well, they say the same about homosexual, right? So that's all deviant behavior rather than a natural disposition. So they won't accept that. But that would take us into a sidetrack, as you say, because if we just stick with the two sexes at the moment, then.
Humorous.
But I just think the route is going down there to try and equate, one, being over the other. It just, that doesn't even work, even in the old days, right? Women didn't need that. So then at least he stepped back a bit, right? He basically said that, well, it's now preferable, because clearly there were women that had young children from 0 to 2, let's say, because that's what he's hanging his hat on, this time period when a woman is quite vulnerable, i.e. that she's, just given birth and she now has to take care of this child, right? That's what he's hanging his hat on. And at that time period, she's vulnerable and she needs taking care of, according to Ahmed. And initially it sounded like he was saying that it's impossible for her to do this on her own. And then obviously when I put it to him that women had done this, I think you could see that obviously women had done this without men. And then he said, well, it's preferable for a man to be there. But that's now a different argument. If you're saying that it's preferable, well, then a woman doesn't need to have a man, in which case he doesn't need to be above her or over her, or whatever the case is.
Well, this is the whole thing. Even in antiquity, was Caesar above Cleopatra? Or Cleopatra? No.
Yeah, but obviously they're going to say, I think we need to keep it with the Quran, or we keep it with things that they would accept, right? They're just going to say, well, actually she maybe just pretended she didn't. I mean, they could come up with all sorts of apologetics in those sort of scenarios, right? We don't know the mind. She pretended that she was strong, or she wasn't, but actually behind closed doors, nobody knows. They could speculate all kinds of stuff on that. But I think if we just use real world examples, then it's much harder, even in Muhammad's time, to argue that a man should be over a woman or a degree above just because he's taking care of her, because she doesn't actually need it. Yes, it's preferable, but it isn't a requirement, like she will die if she doesn't get it. I mean, that's why I asked him, has he ever had children? Women are incredibly capable. My wife has given birth. I'm sure you guys that are married as well, you've had children and so forth. Yes, you'll help your wife, etc., but she's incredible. They don't sleep properly, yet they're still able to carry on going. Yes, it's hard, no doubt about it. But I think we would battle more than they would if it was us doing that, right? So I'm not sure that that they actually need a man, because that's the case he's trying to make, right?
I think there's something else worth pointing out on that. Morally, women tend to be better than men as well. I think it was proven in one study that women are least likely to commit perjury in a court case than men are. Men are something like 79 times more likely to commit perjury than a woman is. So there's many aspects in life where a woman has a better sense of morality than a man has.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think how many wars were started by women, right? Well, you could argue that they weren't allowed to start wars, but if they were in charge, how many wars would have? Women are not naturally conquerors, right? They're collaborators, whereas men, certainly, men with the lizard sort of brain operational, we are conquerors, right? And women are collaborators, and so that makes another difference. So, but you could argue this, right, that women have got certain superior things, and I think we can't argue that. But this thing is taking a broad brush approach and saying it's superior, but Ahmed wants to narrow it down to this 2-year thing, that just after she's given birth. But I think even if that's the case, and we granted him everything that he wanted, it isn't that she's required this. It's that it's nice to have. And really, if we read this verse, it seems to suggest that he has ability over, not ability, but he has a degree over her, because he's spending money and she's being taken care of. So it's like, this is his payback. He's now allowed to be in charge because he's spending the money. And I think, to me at least, that certainly smacks of misogyny.
The other thing, the next nail in the coffin is the next sentence. The good women are obedient.
Yeah.
Okay? They have to obey their master, who is their husband, who is the man in the house, who is a degree above them. Come on, how can you find a context for me which says that the men are in charge, they're a degree above women, and the women have to be obedient? That you can't create a context where this makes sense and it is not misogynistic.
Yeah, and all of them say that, right?
But
yeah, all of the translations that I see, and even if we go to the root, I think would probably say that as well. They're protectors because they're bestowed, some of them over the other, and because they spend from their wealth. is the righteous women are obedient and guarding in the unseen that which them to God. Okay, obviously it doesn't make that much sense, but it definitely says here, even in the root, obedience. So it is saying they're obedient.
When it says men spend of their wealth, in what context is it saying that? Because the way I see it, post Muhammad, women weren't allowed to have businesses or jobs. So the husband had no choice but to spend of their wealth. And it's almost like women are a pet, that they should be grateful to the husband for doing that.
Yes, they had to provide for the family. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I
So
mean,
I
if
don't
you are compelled to not be able to do the things that Khadija did, for example, then obviously you're not going to be able to take care of yourself as well as if you could do those things. And as we've seen, in society, in more liberal societies where women have got the freedom, they can excel, right? But if you're being forced not to do that, then obviously what can you do? Because you're not stronger, so you can't overpower the man. I suppose you could poison him or slit his throat, but that's an extreme example. So if the religion says them they've got to basically stay home in a sense, then obviously it's all very well saying, well, a man takes care of it. But if the woman said, hey, I want to go out and do it, but she's prevented, and then the argument is, hey, well, he's taking care of her. Well, hey, that's all fine and well, but it's almost like she's being kept at home against her will.
exactly.
And then
So
the man
what?
is patting himself
Exactly.
on the back and saying, hey, I'm
Yeah.
taking care of it.
Yeah. Okay, but what I want to point out quickly is that I started this without reference or any specific number of any sentence in the Quran. I made exactly those parts of the sentence available to others so that people can see this. Then we had to go back to the Quran. Did going back to the Quran improve anything? In my eyes, it does not. Because we understand what it says, the Muslims understand, apologists understand, everybody understands what the Quran actually says. And now going into the Quran and then looking at word by word and things like has not improved it at all. So what I think we should do, we should get away from this. We should start looking at concepts. We should start looking at, okay, the Quran gives you the idea that men are above the women. Is this correct? We shouldn't argue about now the individual sentences which say this. We should agree on the concept. And this is something that I find much
Yeah,
more
but I think
useful than arguing about words.
Well, I think stops you will have a lot of Muslims like Ahmed, not necessarily Quranists, but Muslims like Ahmed that will want you to look at the Quran. I don't know that they want to get away from that because if you talk about the concepts, they can just reject that and say, well, hey, that's not what I believe in Islam. And if you have somebody like that, then talking about the concept, the only way to get them on your side or on the level playing field is to appeal to their source. If they
Well,
accept it, of course, that's fine. Then you could talk about the concept, but it's rare that they're going to accept unless they're going to somehow justify it.
this is why I say, you tell me what you think it says. Don't give me the sentence. You tell me what you think.
Then you also have, like, Ahmed's already brought up this evening that the translations we have are errant. All the translations are errant. You have to go back to the Arabic. So
Okay.
there's always this get. Then when you go back to the Arabic, you have rhetorical devices. When you fail with the rhetorical devices, you have to use the infamous default word context, context, context. So every time you try and it's like trying to catch a cat. Trying to catch a Muslim is like trying to catch a cat. They'll just outfox you every time with some kind of linguistic salad.
Okay, but that's why you need to agree common ground. Now, if somebody like Ahmed says, okay, I'm prepared to take the root words, right, now you have a basis. Okay, so we can read the root words and go and have a look at that. I mean, we can look at the translations, but if he's going to reject them, I would be he would be hard pressed to say, okay, I'm not going to accept the root words, right? So if he does that, okay, let's go with that then. We can grant him everything that he wants as long as we get an English translation or an English version that he's prepared to accept. If he doesn't want to do that, that's self-defeating to his position. Because then
there won't be an English translation that any Muslim will accept, because when you get to like Al-Nisa 434, for instance, where it talks about beat your wife, they won't accept it. That it actually says the actual translation. I forget what the Arabic word is, but I can get that in about 5 minutes if you want it. It actually means accurately the transliteration of it is scourge. Scourge is quite a severe word, and when you look at the sequence of events in that ayah, like verbally admonish her, that's like verbal abuse. Then it says leave her alone in the bed. That would be psychological abuse, some kind of leave her. Deny her, and then you got the third, the final, which is physical abuse. You can see the sacred. I use it analogous to like when you got a problem between one country and another. When you've got diplomatic issues, you would try and send an envoy over there, to try and diffuse it verbally. That would be the first part. Second part would be sanctions. So that's when you deny them. The third part is war. We see that in the world politically. So when you see it from the Quranic point of view, you can see the escalation, verbally admonished, sanctions, then it's war. And
Okay,
you have to be stupidly perverse or hopelessly ignorant to deny that is the context of that ayah.
Okay, well, let's keep that for the next time. I think Stops wanted to keep
Yeah.
that for next time. And then we can
Yes.
go into the root words, right? Because if
Yeah.
somebody like Ahmed or anybody else is going to come along and they're going to deny the root words, then we have no way to have a common conversation at all. So I think let's keep that for the next time. And actually, maybe Stops, we can bring that in. What is it that Muslims are going to accept? If you have somebody like Ahmed, which is sort of more on the fringe view of things, what is he going to accept that all of us can have a conversation with a common foundation? Because if we can't find that, then we can't have a common conversation. But I actually think that if he's going to go that route of, hey, I'm not going to accept anything, then the position becomes self-defeating, because then he's admitting that everybody then would need to understand Arabic, and anybody that does not fully understand Arabic should not be a Muslim.
Yeah, but then the version of Arabic is different, because everybody can have their own understanding of the Arabic word, but then it boils down to then you have the wrong Arabic understanding of this, because at the end of the day, it's only their opinion then that counts. It doesn't matter what level of Arabic you're on.
That's actually a good conversation there, because what happens is that with the fast diminishing number of people who actually speak that Arabic, it's the fastest decreasing religion in the world.
Okay, guys, let's leave it for today. What are we going to do? I can't see the chat because everything is grayed out. I don't know what happens if I'm going to say no, close Google, which one it's going to close. I have no idea. Then should I just bring up the hadith and then
let's do hadith of the day. We've been going a little over 2 hours, so it's the first show. So let's start off like that. We've got plenty to cover still over the next 3 weeks anyway. Yeah,
this is what I maintain. All right, guys. Then, unfortunately, I don't know why this thing has crashed. So, because I would have loved to stop 15 minutes ago and go into the discussion with the chat to see what the chat has to say about this. If there are any points being brought up, and go into a more interactive version, which I'd like to do. But today I must admit, fascinated with what Ahmed came up with. So I was a little bit preoccupied with that. Okay. Volume 4, this is Bukhari 452, number 105, and it's by Abu Huraira. Who else? The Prophet said, if somebody keeps a horse in Allah's cause, motivated by his faith in Allah and his belief in his promise, then he will be rewarded on the day of resurrection for what the horse has eaten or drunk, and for its dung and its urine.
Yeah, interesting. I think you could talk again about each of these hadiths separately, but that would go on. I think Stops. The only other thing is when you close the thing, if it crashes, just start it up again and see whether it's still running. Log back into StreamYard, and obviously you might have to close it a second time. So when we say goodnight now, it may be that it'll still run on the recording, so you may just have to log back in again. But I think let's leave it there with that fascinating hadith.
For the value of what the horse has eaten and what it has excremented.
Sounds like a load of horse shit to me.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. It's been fascinating. Hope to see you next Friday. If anybody has ideas for the next month, if you want a theme or something, please go ahead. If you have any contribution that you want to make, please go ahead. Offer, volunteer. It's always welcome. If you want to contribute something on misogyny or something, please do. Otherwise, see you next week. See you next Friday. Thank you. Good night. Thank you very
Good
much,
night,
Rob
all.
and Thunderous. See you next week.
Thanks a lot. Good night.